To ground up. And I think we're here.
Hey, yes. Good evening. The Design Review Board number 1 public meeting of December 13th, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones and pagers. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak at tonight's meeting is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. And anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a particular project must completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table and submit it to staff as well to receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by calling our Design Review Board hotline at 818-548-3171 or by visiting our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available by the table at the front door. Please note that appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his or her discretion. Roll call. Board Member Ellis.
Present.
Board Member Insua.
Here.
Board Member Palmer. Here. Board Member Simonian. The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on December 6, 2012. Next on the agenda is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards. I see Chairman Ellis shaking his head. None received. And that brings us to the Design Review Board agenda proper. There's one case on tonight's agenda. And I would, if you wish, turn the meeting over to Chairman Ellis, or I can just go ahead and continue since it is my case then.
Please do.
The introduction.
Thank you.
All right,
please.
Thank you. Okay, tonight's case is case number PDR-1235423. The project is located at 3013 Montrose Avenue on the corner of Montrose and Ramsdale, and the applicant is Christian Life Church, care of Pastor Randy Foster. This is a first-time submittal for final review. If this project or the site looks familiar, that is because this same exact board for DRB1 reviewed the preliminary design back on July 10th, 2010. It was a preliminary design, and so the board felt that it could proceed to final with certain conditions. The project summary involves the project itself involves the construction of an approximately 7,500 square foot church building. It also includes the resurfacing of the church parking lot and also adding additional playground areas and landscaping as well. This new church replaces the approximately 12,500 square foot church that burnt down in 2006. Unfortunately, due to the fire damage and the church roof system and framing system, the church was required to be completely demolished. As such, it lost its non-conforming rights. It's a church located in an R1650 zone. So they actually had to go through the conditional use permit process. They obtained a conditional use permit to reestablish a church use in a multifamily residential zone. At that time, they also requested a parking reduction permit to allow for 50 parking spaces instead of the required 82 parking spaces as would be required for a new church in this particular zone. The zoning administrator granted that conditional use permit for the church use and the parking reduction for 50 on-site parking spaces. So what you see today on the site plan behind you is what was approved by the planning hearing officer. Again, because the fire unfortunately required the demolition of the church in 2006, they were required to construct the new church to the R1650 standards, and that would include a 20-foot setback along Montrose, side yard or side street setbacks along Ramsdale, the required 25-foot landscaping on the site, as would be for any type of development in an R1650 zone. So this project, other than the parking, meets all of the code standards for the R1650. Going into the actual, and this is just going to be your an abbreviated, quick synopsis of the site plan, or not the site plan, but the staff report, which, as you know, is very detailed and specific. But the staff report is broken down into 3 sections. The first being site plan, and if you don't mind allowing me to come up to the board. Again, I'll just go over this quickly. The site planning issue, as you'll notice here, this is the northwest corner of Ramsdale and Montrose. The site plan, the church has been brought up to the front corner location. The existing parking will remain and again be restriped and landscaped per code. There are 2 existing buildings on site that are to be maintained as part of the project. First one being a 900 some odd square foot office building for the pastor, and then also an approximately 2,200 square foot office slash church or office slash classroom building just to the north of the proposed building. They are actually, they've designed the site plan to include a congregation and play area between the parking lot and the proposed building. There will be access to the building both from the corner location as well as from the parking lot to the west. And I'm going to go over briefly also the comments that were made by the Design Review Board during the previous 2010 meeting. So some of the details will be repetitive, but you'll notice here also that the previous ficus tree that was a part of great discussion last time has been removed in order to allow for greater flexibility in the site planning. Overall, staff feels that the building that has been brought closer to the street and intersection, the corner, has now been opened up for the public plaza, and the project is much more successful in actually addressing its prominent corner locations. So, second topic in the staff report was, bless you, was mass and scale. The previous church was actually a 2-story structure. It was proposed at approximately 12,000 or more square feet, 2 levels. They had classrooms below and the assembly area above. The mass now has been brought down in size due to the fact not only that now the square footage has been decreased, so it's approximately 7,500 square feet. They've also eliminated the classroom component completely, so now it is a 1-story structure. It has an overall height that is below the 41-foot height limit in the R1650 zone, and with the design detailing that's been proposed along the elevation, and again, this would be the elevation that faces Montrose, and essentially this would be the elevation that faces Ramsdale, that it has successfully been redesigned to address any massing and scale concerns that the board previously had. And it does obviously fit in within its neighborhood context because the neighborhood along Montrose has several other churches relatively of the same size, and it also includes 2- and 3-story apartment buildings, larger projects as well. The last component of the staff report addressed the overall design and detailing. Again, this is somewhat of a contemporary building, simple geometric forms, there's changing roof lines, a variety of textures and materials. So even though it's still modern in style, the design, as you'll notice here also, there's certain design aspects that I'm going to go into later on that have been introduced, such as the tower element, the gable roofs, certain window designs that make it look more like a church or a civic building as opposed to the previous design that was reviewed back in 2010. So this leads me to the exact comments that the board had. And just for your information, board members Palmer, Insua, and Ellis. Actually,
Really?
us.
Then I wasn't at the meeting.
Yeah, but
I don't remember this.
you don't remember? Okay, so forgive me. Then I'll double check my notes. But I thought board member Simonian is absent, but I might have confused board member Simonian with Ellis. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Right.
Okay.
I didn't remember
So,
everything.
your comments, actually, the first one being, given its prominent corner location, the project should be redesigned to better address the corner. A variety of options could be explored, such as flipping the proposed play area with a gathering space, thereby resulting in a more publicly oriented corner for congregational use. You'll notice here, and I'm just going to bring this a little bit closer. The previous building sat somewhat in the center, oriented along Montrose. They had the play area and the congregation area brought up to the corner, and they had maintained that ficus tree. The parking obviously was being maintained around the perimeter of the lot with the two existing structures being maintained. There was a definite consensus that the building should be brought to the corner and oriented towards the Ramsdale-Montrose intersection. You'll notice here in the site plan, it's really obvious that the church has been relocated. Now the congregation and play area is located behind the church, between the parking lot and the church. And you'll notice also in the design, which I'll go into later on, addresses its corner prominent location. 2, the appearance of the street is very important, and as such, the architecture should present a more civic appearance along the Montrose Avenue. The DRB commented that the architecture of the church should reflect a more sacred space rather than a multi-purpose room. I think I've just also gone over that comment and condition, which, as you can see here, what you had seen here previously along Montrose with no indication facing Ramsdale Street that it was more of a church. Because of its focus, the tower element, the changes and whatnot, it has a much more civic, institutional, religious appearance than it did prior. So, the third comment was that the street-facing elevations should include greater variation in surface treatment and fenestration to break up the relatively flat masses or facades, while the massive gable roof form could be broken down to be a less massive form. Again, you'll notice pretty obvious. You had the large flat gable that directly went straight up, had a very imposing facade towards Montrose. That has actually been redesigned. Now you have a side-facing gable roof. There's variations in planes with various roof, not only just the roof forms, but actually the windows, and then you have like the actual trim along with the brick, and then you have a tower element that faces and addresses the corner location. The fourth comment was that the ground floor classrooms may need to be relocated or redesigned to have more natural light. Classrooms have been completely eliminated from this project. The fifth was that the landscaping should be redesigned to be more organic in form, less rectilinear as proposed. A licensed architect, landscape architect, is in the audience, that he has prepared that set of plans. You'll notice here it includes quite a bit of drought-tolerant landscaping. There's also been a great emphasis on the reduced rain runoff features and the complementary hardscapes such as planters, seawalls, and fountains into the project. So I will let Ms. Palmer probably have a stab at the landscape plan to address any other issues with regards to its organic forms. The sixth condition was that the preservation of the existing mature ficus tree for incorporation within the proposed site plan be reevaluated. Given that its preservation is hindering the potentially better, more appropriate site plan options. Consider eliminating the ficus tree and proposing a tree-shaded courtyard elsewhere on the site. Obvious, the tree that was hindering the site plan that's being maintained has now been removed and replaced by the structure brought forward, and they are proposing trees throughout the site plan, both in terms of the required landscaping adjacent in the parking lot, but also as well along the street frontages and within the courtyard. And last but not least, for the next DRB review, a streetscape elevation should be provided to help DRB evaluate how the proposal relates to adjacent developments and the compatibility of the project within the neighborhood context. Streetscape from both Ramsdale and Montrose, showing this would be the Montrose location, and this is the existing site as it stands. Staff has been working very closely with the architect, Terry Tarr, with Pastor Randy Foster. It's been a back and forth discussion. They have been very cooperative in addressing any staff's concerns that we've had before in the project. Given the situation and the scenario and the back and forth cooperation, staff is recommending approval with conditions. There are certain conditions, as you noticed in the staff report, in regards to providing standard ones, providing a 5.5-foot decorative masonry wall is required by code, eliminating all the unused curb cuts, locating the required backflow preventers. The two items that staff staff actually had, or I should say one item, that the storage structure right here could perhaps be reevaluated. It's to be more, could be possibly put on the north facade or the trellis feature between the towers. So, I mean, that could be reconsidered, but it's, again, it's just a suggestion. Other than that, staff would recommend approval with the conditions you made in your new staff report. If you have any questions, I'm available to answer them.
One question.
Yes.
I don't see any mention of replacing the chain link fence that's along the Montrose portion.
The chain link fence along the Montrose is going to be actually removed as part of the construction. You mean not the one that's along the retaining wall, is that correct?
It's on top of the retaining wall and
Correct.
it's along the street.
Right. No, that is not going to be there permanently. It's going to be removed after construction.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I'll open the hearing. I have a few cards. Good afternoon. I guess Terry Tarr, we'll start with, Randy Foster, and William Morgan. So please start with Mr. Tarr. Please state your name for the record.
Terry Tarr, live in Oxnard, California, 520 Raspberry Place. Worked for quite a bit of time on this project through a change of pastorate, and that took some time before they were ready to get back into the design process, and that's part of the delay from the 2010 submittal until now. Glad to be back here and representing Pastor Randy Foster again for a second round. Hopefully the design is more palatable to the Design Review Board this time. I think it will be. Delia has done a great job of putting together the staff report, and a lot of the things that I had written up, I'm just not going to read to you because you've already seen them in the report, or a variant of that in terms of how I'd go about describing it. I will describe a couple of things, and there'll be some redundancy in it simply because I didn't get a chance to sort of eliminate all of that, but just to talk through sort of my perception of the redesign, if you will. Because the parking on the site, effectively on sides opposite the street corner, we had to address a secondary entrance. That connection between the two, so we have a primary entrance at the street corner. We have a connection between the two, so that allows people to transit from one side to the other and enter the building from either side. This was something that got discussed a little bit at the previous DRB. Was how we were going to accomplish that, where you have parking all on one side and you want a public entry to the opposite corner or opposite side. The nice thing about bringing the building to where the DRB wanted it to be and into the corner was how it affects buildings sitting on the site and working with the slope. We've got about a 10 to 11 foot slope change from Montrose to the existing buildings that remain. So we were able to create some stepping effects within the building. So we start at 0 at Montrose. We come up about 4 feet to the new entry plaza area that's out on the corner, pedestrian space. We proposed an optional fountain out there, some seating area, some landscape that surrounds it and starts to cut into the site in terms of creating this flat plaza area. But that's up 4 feet. Then we enter the building at that point, and then a ramp connects to the secondary lobby space at the back that interfaces with the parking lot. All of that transition allows us to sculpt the building. And so the net effect is we get a much nicer design that addresses the issues that were of concern with the previous design, which the mass was just too much to the street. And I don't disagree with the DRB on that. We were trying to solve functionality. Secondary was trying to solve the aesthetic issues. Okay, so much more ecclesiastical kind of motifs that we've thrown into it in terms of the design of the windows, certain repetition kinds of things that we did, more detail in the trimming, more detail in terms of selections of materials. variations on those materials. We added more brick to the project, sculpted several pieces. Avilia brought up the question about the east side, and there's a combination of bathroom and storage and a stair, and we've gone through a couple of undulations with that during the planning process. So this is a new comment, and what I would like to see is, if the DRB is still concerned about that we go ahead and condition that, and I'll bring back another rendition of that. There's other things that we can do with that roof line. This was a response to a previous comment, and so we came to this point, and now a new comment has come up, and so it's that one has sort of caught me off guard. But I think there's plenty of opportunity there to rectify that if the DRB wants some additional work on that. Let's see. Multiple colors of stucco. One of the things, if you've seen the materials board, is when I selected, looks like I'm short on time, huh? Selected a type of roof, I then picked the colors out of that roof to use on the wall surfaces. So if you finesse the colors, sometimes it'll really sing in the sunlight. And so that was one of the things I wanted to try to accomplish with the selection of the colors, was pick up what's in the roof, the granules of the roof, and represent those in the paint colors. Let's see, we've got a series of steps in the planters. The landscaping then follows the building around in terms of a series of steps in the landscaping. We've introduced the trellis work to try to break the building up, create shade and shadow, soften it. And so I think we've been successful in that process. The tower, we probably would have initially thrown a cross on top of it in trying to be very ecclesiastical, but it exceeds the ordinance in terms of height. And so we took it off and introduced the cross into the glass. I will stop now if I need to, or
You know what? No, you're
get
fine.
another
Take a
minute or two.
Yeah, you want to?
Okay, I'll try to wrap it.
Your main points out. No problem, sir.
So then on the west side, where we're interfacing with a parking lot and a secondary plaza area, the playground, those kinds of spaces where it's people space outdoors, and you want to keep those people there, you want an opportunity for them to fellowship, we brought the scale down. So we've got the lower gable at the entry point, the trellises, and so we've brought it down to a human scale, pedestrian type of scale. The gable behind it steps up, allows room for some mechanical systems up inside the mechanical wells. Then the clear story windows up above that as we transition from one roof to the next. There was a comment in the Villia, I don't think you read it, but out loud, but I read it here about wanting to put a hardy board or a wood trim on that higher gable. And it's in stucco now there is some wood trim or a hardy board trim that's smaller, maybe 6-inch, 8-inch range, and then the stucco is down below that. The structure right there is a couple feet deep, and so it's hard to encase that in wood or hardy board. Not impossible. So if the DRB's in agreement that that's what we should do, then I'll study that and come back to you with a solution on that. But it's about 2 feet deep of structure right there, and so typically we'd prefer to see that in a stucco. It's just easier to manage in terms of detailing and water prevention and not having to repaint and those kinds of things. So.
Excuse me, Vic. Is that 2 foot?
That's the high gable. So if you
You want
look
to
at
come back around?
Yeah.
Here's
Oh,
a
if you
pointer
want,
right here,
yeah.
Junior. Please come on back here.
Yeah, so this on the west side, or here on the east side, you have the deeper trim part. So the green is 6 to 8 inches, and that would be hardy board or wood trim painted. And then this portion is stucco, the brown. And it's just because of the depth of it that I'd rather not put wood on it or a hardy board. It'd have to be in pieces. We could do a lap siding or something. It just doesn't seem right to try to introduce that. In a single line trim, yes, but in that deeper portion. So that would be my argument against it. But if
That depth is necessary because of the structural element
now
behind it. Okay.
that's not to say you couldn't redesign it. That could be done. So if somebody said, well, we don't like the depth of that structure, to me it feels right in terms of its scale and mass. It's quite a ways off the ground. To me, it works. If somebody said, no, it doesn't work, we need it to be thin line, then what you do is you cut it back and you use outriggers structurally attached to the deeper structure that's inside, and the outrigger is thinner in mass.
We're talking about a wood frame.
Yes, a wood frame, yeah. So all I do is expressing the depth of the real structure that can span that far. I brought it to the exterior, so it's trying to express the reality of the structure there.
And is it a composite roofing? What kind of
Yeah,
roofing?
a composition shingle.
Okay.
And Velia, is the materials board here?
That's what I'm looking for.
Oh, okay. So we issued a materials board, and it has there's a piece of the actual roof on it, but you're probably very familiar with composition shingle. And it's a particular one. It meets solar requirements for a cool roof, but has three distinct colors in it, and that's part of what I was trying to capture is those three colors in the stucco and the wood trim.
And the glass piece at the entry tower, at the corner, is it some sort of a mosaic piece? The portion that represents the cross? Yes.
Here,
Yes.
that would be etched glass. So if you etch the glass, so at night if you shine a light on it, the etched part will glow, and so we can create sort of that effect. During the day, the sun might, if it's hitting it, it's going to create that effect on it. But it was a nice way to introduce that element without putting it up on top and exceeding the ordinance and having to apply for a variance. For that part of it. So. And that's actually Pastor Randy Foster's idea, so I'll give him the full credit on that. I like it. I'll probably use it again. So, I think, I'm sorry, leave this here. Let's see if I can wrap this. Oh, sustainability. Let me just hit that. I don't know how concerned DRB is with sustainability.
Can
Is
you
that
use
of
all
interest, or is
the,
that not germane?
use all the materials left over from the old church to make the new one? Is that-
That would be nice if they were still there. Unfortunately, it was demolished. So increased landscaping, shading, more trees, trying to get rid of heat island effect, using ground cover, reducing runoff via permeable surfaces, controlled runoff for filtration or percolation. So we've kind of thought through all of that, even at the schematic level. Rainwater capture for some irrigation. Daylighting, so we've got high windows so we can daylight and bring limited amounts of daylight into effectively light a room but not create excess heat. Efficient lighting with LEDs and fluorescents, efficient air conditioning, passive ventilation, so we have high-low ventilation capabilities in several rooms. Active secondary ventilation, so for instance the tower, you see all that glass, but if you look on the back side of it you'll see there's a louver, and that'll be put on a stat with a fan, and you bring air in low and exhaust it high, and it'll self-cool itself very efficiently. Energy cool color selections. The only one that isn't is the brown, and it's limited quantity to create accent. Good insulation, use of wood as a renewable resource, significant portion of the structure. Low VOCs in the selection of materials. Keeping the two existing buildings rather than tearing them down. There was that discussion. So reuse is part of the mix. Multi-use functionality versus building more square feet. So rather than a separate fellowship hall that we would like to have had originally, we've eliminated that and gone to a multi-use configuration. Smaller carbon footprint. We'd like to do PV on the building behind. So there's an existing roof there. It faces south. It's not too large. What we don't know is if that existing structure will support the additional weight. But we'd like, DRB to understand that we'd like to throw that in. I don't know if it's sort of hidden behind by this building. So you'd never see it from the street unless you went up around the corner and off at an angle. You might see it just barely. We don't know if we can support it financially. But I'd like the DRB to comment on it, and if that's going to be acceptable to attempt to propose it. Obviously, it would save them some dollars in the long run on electricity costs. So.
Would this be under the classroom office building?
Yes.
Or on the office building, the smaller
classroom
one?
office building.
Yeah,
Right.
just
So
to
there's
jump in here, state law prohibits us from conducting
talking about
design review on photovoltaic or other, so you're clear.
I'm clear. Okay.
Right.
Well, I wanted to bring it up. I didn't want to kind of slide it by. So, I will close with that. I'm available for questions, of course.
All right, thank you, Mr. Tar. Anybody
Yeah.
have a
I
question?
have two questions.
And William Morgan, landscape architect, is going to address landscape issues if you're, in terms of that particular topic.
The etched glass,
Yes.
is that protected by any means?
Yes, what we would do is multi-layered. So the outside layer is laminated. It'll take a brick.
Okay.
And you may crack, but it'll take the brick and not damage the etched glass. Etched glass, of course, is expensive. You want to protect it. So.
And my other question was, the reason that the east elevation has horizontal little windows as opposed to the other elevations, they're all square?
I had a specific request to give it some variation. I would be glad to square them up.
I just wanted
Yeah.
to know what your reason was.
Yeah, that's all it was a comment made to add more shapes and forms to it rather than too much repetition of the same thing.
Okay, thank you.
And that was a place to introduce it. We did the same on the west side. Now, understand those are bathrooms or storage rooms, and so it's a high window. It's up above your normal sight line. It's a bathroom. It might be an etched glass, so it's it's translucent but not transparent. And so that's part of the reason for why they're up, sort of appearing to be up high.
I just want to know whether the shape.
Yeah, so we did the same on the west, on the west, and those are bathrooms, some of them are bathrooms. Yeah, I think those are both bathroom
Okay,
areas. So.
thank you.
Any other questions?
What is the material that's encasing the windows on the facade?
It's encasing the windows.
Well, around the windows.
Yeah, so it's a surround, but it's stucco.
Okay.
So it's all you do is turn it on the 45 degree, and so then you recess the window back to the inside of the wall instead of the outside of the wall. You see so many buildings now, the windows on the outside. It's an inexpensive solution. We do it all the time. But it doesn't have the character that we want for this building. So you put the buildings to the windows to the inside, and then tip that stucco on a 45, and it creates a surround effect.
Is it going to be 2x6 framing, or what's...
Most likely 2x6. Some of the taller ones you might have to transition to a fiberboard. So, that's actually a pretty good product in terms of getting a long stick without using as many trees.
Sure.
So
And so your typical recess would be 2 to 3 inches, or...
probably more in the
Better
4
Okay.
range, I would say. Yeah. And on the end walls, the end gable walls, where it's taller, I'd get in the 6 range, or something like that. On the tower, it's a protrusion and a recess combination. So we're trying to get a little accent there around the arch of the window. So it protrudes out first, and then recesses back, and so you get a deeper recess effect.
And is that all just stucco, different color?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a change in color on the stucco.
Okay. Okay.
Yes.
Any other questions? I have 2 quick ones. There's a basement indicated on the floor, or the building square foot data.
Yeah, there's a partial.
Where is that on the,
Okay, if I can come back up?
Please do.
It's easier to do it than
Yeah,
trying to
please.
describe it. We needed a bit of storage and some place to put electrical panels and that type of thing. So you can see it here. So there's already an elevation change at the street now. There's a wall about yay high, the one you talked about that has the chain link fence on it. So if we change that to wrought iron, then that portion of the wall can stay, but we pretty it up with some wrought iron. That wall comes along here. We'd have a stair going up to transition from the sidewalk level to that upper plaza level. The building has to be up at this height anyway to get connection to the parking lot.
And where are those
And the
stairs
relationship.
located?
They're behind a wall right here. You can see that's the top of the wall
Oh, yes,
rising up.
on the site plan, though?
Yeah, so right here.
Okay.
So it protrudes out just a couple feet. Is that where we had it? Or did we recess it back? I think I may have done that on a note to you, but I'm not sure that this version of the site plan shows it. I think there's an update on that where that wall is actually at the setback line rather than protruding like it is now. But that's where the stair is at. So might put a gate there, maybe not, I don't know, it's, that's kind of one of those, does it feel right with a gate? Do we want to try to create some security there or not? But I'm open either way. So then the stair rises up to connect those two levels. And then that creates a space underneath the building right there. Can't get it over here because you can see the line, the building's coming down, the ramp is coming down. And so it limits me to that space. But it gives me a little bit of space to put some electric panels, maybe a little bit of mechanical systems, and some storage.
Can you point it out on the A2
Tried to hide it
floor
with the
plan?
trellis. I'm sorry.
On the A2 floor plan, where the general boundary of it?
That blue,
Okay.
so that's the space underneath
Oh, okay.
the bathrooms and that hallway. And there's a pair of doors and two single doors. And so what we're showing is fire sprinkler riser in the corner, an electric room. Don't know exactly how big it needs to be, and who cares? It's a hidden, and then storage.
And are these the doors?
So
here?
structurally, this is a main structural wall. These are non-bearing. So,
And are these the doors?
yep. So those are two doors, fire sprinkler room, electrical room, and we could get rid of a door. So somebody said, well, too many doors. Well, we could do that. There's a pair of windows there, and I brought that down visually. And actually, to me, it looked better with the door than without it. But those are so subjective. Those are the kinds of things that. So,
While
to you.
we're talking about, and while we have you up here,
Yeah.
while we're talking about that rear entrance that you were just pointing out to, as far as it coming up to that rear courtyard, so is that the entry point? Do you envision that being the entry point for someone that's walking down Montrose?
No, somebody's coming down Montrose or Ramsdale.
Okay.
They're going to come in here in this plaza zone. So it's what we're trying to do is grab their attention
Right.
with the tower and the double, it's sort of a double entry, one that faces Montrose, one that faces Ramsdale, in that tower. You can see that this effect happens on both sides. On one side, it requires a stair because we're 4 feet off the ground. The other side, it's coming in at this level because if you've been
corner.
out to the side, when you turn the corner, it rises really quick. It rises like 2.5 feet very quickly, and then we can do that last couple of feet, or a foot and a half to the door.
And so is the intention of the rear stairs as the fire exit, or is it a tertiary entry?
Well, there's a stair here,
Yes. No, yeah.
the ramp that links the two
Correct.
lobbies. Okay, you're talking about this stair?
Yeah.
It's very secondary.
Okay.
So if in a
Even tertiary, one would say. because
yeah, it could be even tertiary. If the DRB said get rid of it, I'd probably find a way to get rid of it. I like it there because it allows somebody on the street
Right.
to rise right up to that plaza. Okay, there's an event going on, and there's people out there, and somebody walking on the street looks up and, oh, how do I get there? It's sort of the wall's in your way, kind of an effect. If you're standing there, you have to go around and walk up the parking lot, or go around all the way through the building, or go up here and link this way. And it allows someone on the street to get that connection.
And that's even more so in the community that you're in. It's a community that people walk. Also, your parking reduction, so there's a lot of off-site parking
Yeah.
during services, so it really draws people in from multiple places.
That's my hope.
To come to the sanctuary.
That's my hope,
Absolutely.
yeah. Is to draw them in here visually. This is a shortcut route. If they see people here, and we're hoping that they'll put tables and chairs out here, and it'll be a gathering spot for an outdoor space.
And so when we're talking about the primary entrance from the corner, one walks up the stairs, goes into the tower, and then from the tower, they have to proceed down the side hall
Yeah, they would connect here.
in order to connect to the main lobby. And I know that's got windows along the side of it and to bring in light, and we're talking about really a ceiling height of, say, 8 to 10 feet?
Right.
Have you considered kind of a more formal experience for that entry? In other words, you walk into the typical cathedral, the old cathedrals, right? All of a sudden, you're just struck by size, and that's because of what you're walking into, is
Yeah.
to create that hierarchy, which is wonderful. It's uplifting.
Sure.
And so we have that at the rear, and that's why I'm asking about these entrances,
Right.
just so you know where I'm going with my train of thought. And so our primary entrance for the neighborhood and for the community to walk into is really off of a side hall where they come through and they go past the bathrooms to that main lobby. And that's when they finally are greeted with that experience. Have you done any studies as to how that experience could be heightened or enlightened at that primary
Yeah, well, I
entrance?
mean, we looked at the option of basically flipping this. So your main entrance is here, you immediately go up, so somehow you've got to get up 8 feet, 9 feet to this elevation. So this building can't sit at Montrose level. Can't might be too strong, but difficult to site it there and come out the backside and try to interface with these other two buildings.
Then you'd have a
And
lot of steps on the
parking
other
lot.
side.
See, the parking lot comes in at 10 feet above Montrose.
Understood.
And so a lot of people that are coming in here because the parking is there. Okay. So we looked at flipping the building and how do we transition up that 8 feet. You'd have a grand staircase and an elevator, and then the entry point, the lobby. And then at the backside, it would be a much more reduced secondary entrance. So we looked at that option. We just didn't feel like it was as functional as we'd like it to be in terms of interface with the parking lot and the outdoor spaces.
Have you?
It's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it's a difficult one to solve, especially on a tight property where we don't have the option of making this large and have more of a grand entrance at both sides.
I mean, putting details aside, just for discussion purpose, at the moment, what if this roof kind of were to extend? So you get this height, and then it would come out, and then you would maybe get a slanted glass of some sort or something. And all of a sudden, this could do this as well. And now you have this kind of tapering up of the ceiling. And they might even hear what's happening inside. They might even hear the singing. They might hear, maybe not, maybe so.
Interesting idea.
But this is like this, and this does this, and this roof comes down, this gets eliminated. And of course, that would create a different facade. But I was just...
And a lot more mass to the street.
I understand.
And what I was trying to do is bring that mass down. Even though we have a building that really starts 8 feet off the ground and works up from there.
But you were given direction to reduce mass, and that's what...
Yeah.
You've done that.
So we're trying to bring that mass down by breaking it up, by bringing a lower roof in here.
And I have these discussions because you're creating a wonderful building, and you're creating a building that's going to be there for a long time. And the intent of the building is to cause inspiration as you walk in.
Sure.
And so we need to judge mass along with intent of building and use of building on a long-term basis.
Except for interior configurations, as we can only really focus as a board on what we see from the street. When we looked at this at staff level,
Point
we
well
thought it was
taken, but I think
lower
we're-
budget Our Lady of the Angels downtown with similar entry patterns.
And we understand the intent of the design review board, and some of us have been there for a long time. We understand, and I think what we're having is kind of a dialogue to understand intent, because entry into a building and connectivity to the neighborhood and to the surrounding fabric is an important item on a large civic building. And so, few questions to understand the mindset of the diagrammatic studies that went into it, I think is important for us to use as a background, without going too far into the interiors and so forth. But so I appreciate that feedback.
Yeah, good. A lot of thought went into it. My initial reaction was, that's no way to do this. We're trying to deal with two opposing forces, in a sense, of addressing that corner in an appropriate manner and addressing the parking where, half or better of the people were likely to be coming from. Do we force them to go all the way around and have one focal entry point so that we can make that one put all the magic there, if you will? Or do we try to create some magic at both ends of the building?
Or address the corner,
Yeah.
which makes sense.
I think if we didn't have the 8 to 10 foot rise coming around that corner and it was a flatter site, we'd have a lot fewer challenges to deal with, because the building could be down lower. We could make that transition without the stepping that we're trying to accomplish.
Yet at the same time, I think that you've executed that corner well, because with the building being adjacent to the corner and you got 8 feet down, the tower doesn't need to be overly tall to
Right.
achieve that same visual prominence. The building also having that nice courtyard in the front is set back a little bit. The corner gives you this nice perspective depending on whatever way you're looking at it. And it gives you the ability to walk in if you've parked in the streets. Yet at the same time, the active part really for the campus is the parking area, drawing it down to the secondary entrance, and it's executed well that way. I like what you've done with it.
Well, good.
I think so. I think for me, I think the elevation is a good challenge.
It is.
And
It
now
creates
instead of
great
having
drama.
right. Instead of having a church at the same level with the main entrance, now you've got it sitting up a little bit. And I think it's good drama. I think it's done well, and especially when you got
It
a
creates
corner.
opportunity.
Yeah, you got a
but it
corner.
also creates
It
challenge.
does. It does. But I think it's done well in that sense.
Well, good.
Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions?
Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Tarr. Randy Foster, would like to approach, and please state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Randy Foster. I live at 3147 Incinel in La Crescenta. My wife and I were invited to take over the pastorate of this congregation a little over 2 years ago. Former pastor who went through this whole process for a number of years with Terry Tarr, with the congregation, with you, with everyone on the Planning Commission, was tired and left. The district asked me to step in. I've been involved in many building projects in California, in churches, and they asked me to come and to love on the people, to pastor the people, and to try to see if we can come to terms with a building that really will fit the community. The church is 90 years old. October 21st, we celebrated 90 years in the And so it's not like we're a brand new congregation wanting to launch this new thing. In fact, if you look at the pictures of the former building and you look at these pictures, they're very similar in terms of the structure and the tower out front and those things. That wasn't necessarily intentional, but we wanted to get as big of a footprint as we could on the property, and to allow for as large of a congregation as we can, with limited parking, with limited space. The congregation after the fire in 2006 dwindled down, and we're running between 50 and 60 now, where they were over 100 at the time, and there were a lot of issues. But I'm excited about this plan. We debated whether to keep Terry Tarr as our architect, but knowing him personally and seeing the work that he's done, I knew that we could sit down and design a building that would not only be functional for us as a congregation so we could grow, but one that the community would be proud of. And that's what we've presented to you today. I think a building that looks like a church, that operates like a church. You were talking about functionality a few minutes ago, and parking and ingress and egress to the building. As a pastor, I'm seeing families parking in the parking lot and walking their kids into the classroom buildings and coming right into that secondary entrance, where people from the neighborhood, older people, people without kids or whatever, children, will probably come in that front entrance. And we can create the kind of atmosphere, and we can put speakers along the hallway so they're hearing the music playing, and we can do those kinds of aesthetic things from the inside that I think will create the thoughts that you were presenting. Anyway, I don't have a lot to say. I'm thrilled to be part of this process, and we will work together with you, and we'll see something beautiful on that corner again. If you've been by the property, then you probably noticed that when I came, there was a 6-foot construction fence around the entire dirt area, because it was dirt and weeds up to about here. And we whacked off the weeds and put in grass. And I was talking to somebody in Starbucks the other day, and they said, "Well, what church do you pastor?" I said, "Christian Life Church." And they said, "Oh, that one with the beautiful park out front." And we've tried to create for the community the feeling that And not only are we here to stay, but we're here to create something beautiful for the community. And, maybe 2 years or 3 years before we actually see a building put onto that piece of property, but in the meanwhile, I want the neighborhood to be happy with who we are. And so we created the green space. I wish I could keep it all and still put a building up there, but we can't do that. And unfortunately, the ficus tree has to go, and that's okay. There are no sacred trees on our property, and the people that have a feeling about that ficus tree, we've told them we're going to plant a lot of trees. It's our desire to make it really fit the community well. So thank you so much for considering this, and if you have any questions from me in terms of functionality or whatever, I'd be glad to answer those for you.
Thank you, Mr. Foster. Anybody questions? No. Thanks, sir. The last card I have is William Morgan. Mr. Morgan, please state your name.
William Morgan, landscape architect, 3720 Sheldon Drive, Ventura, California. I came on the project a little more than a year ago, and was told that we were going to be at the review meeting here, so I thought I'd come down and run through a few things here. I've developed the design with Terry Tarr, the architect, and Pastor Foster, and with Bila. She reviewed a couple progress layouts of the plan. I'd emailed her a PDF, and we discussed it, so it wasn't a situation where I was doing a blind design without having input from my planner. So there's a lot of help, and plant materials were selected from the Be Waterwise site that the city recommends, and from the plant palette. I think all of them are on the plant palette that the city said are acceptable. So that's how the materials were arrived at. One comment that I see here in the review from planning is that too rectilinear and want to see more undulation. I've tried to do the undulation with various textures of trees. We got two of the live oaks, put them in locations on the two streets so that they wouldn't block view of the building, but they would anchor the corners of the view of the building. The California sycamores are in kind of focal corners, I guess you'd say, of the site, plus they are the larger planters for the larger trees. And I'm trying to think in terms of root zone with larger specimen trees, and when you have smaller trees, as I've shown in a graphic scale, that are redbud, Australian willow, crepe myrtle. I don't have the other two varieties on the top of my head right now. Put those in areas that are smaller, still having a variation of tree species, color variation, and texture variations. So the undulation, I guess you might say, might be between deciduous and evergreen, and trees with tall mass versus trees with lower mass. So we have that undulation that way. Vines on the wall will give some relief. Probably the place that we could add a little more undulation to the design would be in the front drainage swale. And I've shown it in a lawn out there just because along public areas that are deep in landscape, maintenance is easier when you have a lawn. And I could add from the Montrose side where I have a continuous linear layout of the shrubs, do a lower story shrub. So if I have a 6-foot high shrub, then I could bring some lower 3-foot high shrubs in front of it and do some undulation in front of that. I'm trying to think in terms of maintenance and appearance along there. So I tried to, again, give variations of texture, scale, color. That's how I've addressed more organic comment with a site that's pretty rectilinear. One thought I had with regard to the parking lot, my plan does not reflect the triangular pop-outs on the I guess call it the northwest side of the property, the left side. I had a pop-out so I could gain more root zone area for the trees, and I'll have root barriers on all of the trees that are within 10 feet of concrete to protect the concrete from breakage. But planning had asked that those triangular pop-outs be removed, but I was thinking that we could possibly do a tree planted in the same location, but do a tree grate that would allow the root zone to expand, give oxygen and water to the root zone over the tree, and still keep that tree cover that goes along the perimeter. The one other comment that I had was regard to the corner of Montrose and lost the name of the other side street. Ramsdale. I've done a little courtyard there. I've shown seat walls and a fountain. The seat walls and the fountain are for future construction because the budget's going to be very tight. But I've designed into those areas the potential of having those put in at a later date. And I guess that's pretty much a review of the whole design. I do have a PDF that has mature photographs of all of the plant materials so you can see how it would impact the site visually and enhance the building and not make it feel like it's just a row of trees.
Any questions for Mr. Morgan? No, I have one quick one, and I noticed, and you mentioned, on your proposed seat wall fountain planted, there's a note that the existing monument sign to remain in place,
Correct.
and then I don't see it anywhere else. Is it, that's the only note that I saw for that. Oh, I guess it's on, I was looking at your landscape plan, I didn't see it kind of blended
It probably is on the architectural.
Yeah, I noticed it now on the proposed A1, it's on A1 also. Right. And it's, oh, I see where it is. Okay.
It's on the corner.
On the
Yeah.
behind you.
Yeah, right.
Raised masonry and signage and...
I see where it is. Yeah, I was looking at that, and I didn't see it on there, so that's what, but it's hidden under the trees there. I see it. Okay, great. Thank you. All right. Yeah, with that, I'll close the public session. Ms. Palmer, would you like to dive into this? Thank you.
Start. Well, I'm pleased with the design. I live down the street, so I've looked at this project forever. I even watched it burn. So I think the new design is very similar to the old design, and that fit the site very well. So I think the architect's done a good job there. I'm also pleased that there was no height to allow for the cross on top. I think where you've positioned it is the best location. Just my comment about those square windows, those rectilinear windows on the Ramsdale side, I think the square ones would look fine. There was a comment about the paving, being interlocking paving, and if there wasn't enough money that would go to stamped concrete. I would really like to see the paving. I think that would give a warm feeling and reflect all the colors in the roof and the other colors on the buildings, so I would like to see that interlocking paving maintained. The landscape plan, I think, is fine. I don't think we need any undulation. The landscape architect and I both agree that trying to consider maintenance. If you have too much undulation with too many shrubs in too many places and you have poor maintenance, it's going to look a lot worse. So I think it's, the way the landscape plan has been done, I think it's a good design. And as far as those pop-outs in the parking area, I think those should stay as opposed to putting grates or anything of that nature, unless there's a reason we can't have that.
The pop-outs unfortunately project into the required parking area space. That's the unfortunate part.
And let's see if I had anything else. There were some plant material that didn't correspond to the BWise.com. I think those are in shaded areas, and I don't think that's an issue because you can't always use drought-tolerant plantings in every instance. Those are my comments.
Great, thank you. Mr. Simonian.
Well, I
think this is a wonderful design. I think it's going to be a great addition to that corner. And I've been studying the design from really all aspects, and that's why I was asking a lot of questions, was trying to understand the mindset behind some of the layout. And I appreciate the way the building has evolved from its previous proposal to what we have now. It has a lot more angulation. It has a lot more of a feeling, let's say, as far as the design is concerned. And it's been worked out to the point where a small, well, a mid-sized building, it has quite a bit of interesting factors to it. The corner entrance, I think, is done well. As far as its connectivity to the neighborhood, the way you've done the etch glass, I think, works well, and it's going to be just beautiful at night. And I think some of the roof detailing and some of the clear-storied lights that you have placed in these areas is going to be a wonderful way to bring in light to the building. And the outdoor space has been reworked where it's very functional, where it's now between the parking and also the building. And most of the time we enjoy some great weather in Southern California, so I could see that being as kind of an extension of the building itself. And the retractable shade structure is elegant, it's nice, it's a good scale, and it's going to add to that outdoor living room or outdoor congregation space, however you want to categorize it. The entry points into the building, and of course we have the primary at the corner, and then we have, well, I guess maybe that could be the secondary or the primary, depending how you look at the parking. And then we have the tertiary entry point. And if I were to really have any comments on it, because I think it's just so worked out, and when an architect spends this much time and designs with intent, our idea is to only bring up items which we think would just better it slightly, and not so much as force a change, but maybe some considerations on your part if you think it's a good idea. I would say that you have this area in here which could be used as a way to really strengthen this connectivity to the neighborhood, and it might be a really nice way to have a little more of a grand stair, which is not going to cost more to produce, but what it will do is allow people walking from this area to come in and to really be part of this courtyard. Because once you come up these steps and then you have the trellis, you're really talking about, I don't know, 4 feet or something, or 5 feet to sneak by it between those columns. So it doesn't really serve its civic duties all that well, but you do have all this space that you could work in, some nice stairs. And really the only place that you could see it is in this area where you know, you have this kind of stair that pops up, but you have all this area to do something special. And you could have some planning or some block walls with landscaping built into it. So you have landscaping kind of cascading on its side, and it's very welcoming as an entry point. I also mentioned this entry point, which is, I think, wonderfully done. I would not change it. I think it's a great location. The scale's working to your advantage because you're basically gaining that beacon of a corner without adding bulk. So it works really well, and I'm glad you were able to switch your entry to this area. The only part where I think, as a suggestion, is you know, you come in and then you go all the way around, is this hallway in this area. You're already spending the money, you're already going through the efforts, and if you kind of create a more meaningful entry point, that coupled with the speakers and whatnot, there you could hear what's happening inside, I think would add to the building. And it could be done simply. I don't think all that much more massing will be created if this roof was extended and you get a higher ceiling in this hall area. I think you would get a lot of bang for your buck by doing that, and I don't think it would add all that much massing, because we're really talking about, you know, this kind of coming out into a deep thing and then this kind of being glass possibly up here of some sort. And so that would be a consideration. I don't think it's important enough to really dive in on it, dwell in on it, and make it a condition, but I do think I'll add to it. But overall, job well done. It's a huge leap from the previous proposal, and I'm pleased with it.
Thank you. Insua.
Okay, I'll be brief. I really like the design. I think it really feels like a community church that draws people in from all sides. Those who are in the neighborhood will be able to walk to the primary sanctuary, let's say from the front, the narthex there, and come around. I like that there's feeders from all different sides, especially if you have off-site parking, because you're parking reduction. I like the scale of it. Like we talked about before, it's a community church, and I think it's really going to be meaningful to the community who's known the church for many years and has probably been wishing for the church to come back, although the park is probably terrific. It's going to be a good signature for that corner, and I think it's executed well. That. All in all, I think it's done well. And my purpose for saying this is not to alter the design. The architect you've stayed with and chose is excellent. My only place that I think could be explored a little bit is on sheet A. Let me see if there's a larger scale here. And I only do sheet A6, which is the exterior entrance that faces the parking lot. The entrance has these stocky, square, uninspired columns on each side or post holding up that little overhang. Consider eliminating those, especially since there's not a lot of layout in front of that. So those columns are going to not only be aesthetically not great, in my opinion, but also very close to the building and the walking area. So there's going to be a lot of people kind of like working around the column. Consider eliminating those two columns, especially since you have the opportunity to cantilever from the inside because you have the vault going up. Not to spend your money, but you got to put a column in. You got to put two columns in anyway. Consider putting the weight on interior of the wall, cantilever it over, and because you have the volume, you'll be able to carry that overhang this way. Then consider, only consideration, since you have wood trellis on either side with the ivy and the landscaping, consider opening that space with a truss sort of beam design to give you air in there, light and air, and then consider the clear glass on the storefront to go in the same shape of that so you can see the glass. Since you've already got glass there, take it up all the way, take it up into that, and then you'll be able to see through that, and it'll give you a really nice, light, airy entrance there, and you'll eliminate those posts. Other than, that's just a preference. That's just a feeling that I'm getting. But other than that, I think you've done an excellent job, both on the site, both on how that environment's going to be, both from the parking, the daycare, the school, the play area. I think it's done so well. It's a shame that you've struggled so much in the last 2.5 years. It's 6 years after the fire. But you know what? It's stuff like this that inspires communities to come back to a church like this. And I think in the end, it's going to be not a good thing that you had a fire, but I think it's going to be, and when you look back at history of this church, it'll be a turning point for the new millennium, if you will. So congratulations. I think you did a great job.
All right. Thank you. I concur with my colleagues. I didn't see the original project, but you've certainly gone 1,000% into the right direction. Concerning the notes from staff, I have no problem with the wood or the hardy board. I mean, I think the way the architect has designed it seemed to work. The storage room is an interesting thing. I certainly wouldn't turn the project down because of that. I do agree with Ms. Palmer about the windows being, I think you could, you maybe went one step too far to break it up by going a little smaller on that side. But other than that, I think, again, I congratulate you guys. I'm looking forward to seeing the building completed. All right. So anybody like to make a motion?
Or read any.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Thank you. So,
going through the conditions that were in the staff report, the first one being consider using wood or hardy plank instead of the stucco or the fascia. That's been eliminated. Is that what I'm hearing consensus on? That the first one is
Yeah, stucco's okay.
stucco is okay.
Yeah,
So-
stucco was okay. All right.
Okay. The second condition was to consider relocating the storage rooms at the east of the building to eliminate the gable bump out that detracts from the harmonious geometry of the east facade's design. I did not hear consensus to support that condition. This is just to consider perhaps the window window sizes. Consider the window sizes
Right.
and shape within that area. Is that correct? Okay. Number 3 is just a standard condition repeating code requirements for the masonry wall adjacent to a residential zone. So if I see nods, yes. Okay, keep it in. Would you like to?
You know, if it's a staff question, you can bring it up. Sure, come on up. I'll open it again. Mr. Tar?
There is a masonry wall there now. Is the operative word the decorative or the height?
It's actually just any location that isn't there. I didn't think that it was along the entire parking lot. It is there?
Yeah, there is,
Okay.
and
Then
that's what
they would just need to be maintained. So
Okay, it may not be the 5.5.
I think it's the 5.5.
I think it's 4.5.
I think it's the
You could add
5.5.
Another row of block on top.
That's fine.
Just wanted to clarify.
To modify the existing.
Provide a minimum of 5.5 foot high masonry
Modify the
wall.
existing wall.
Yeah, right,
Okay.
Yeah, modify.
Okay. The fourth being to eliminate all unused curb cuts, standard. Fifth, to locate all required equipment, backflow preventers prior to submittal for plan check, standard. I heard several comments from Board Member Simonian, and I would love to have Mr. Platt chime in if you have any clarifications. But the first one was being the grand staircase off of Montrose. This was something that was talked about, not so much talked about, but there was mention that there are setback limitations for that grand staircase. So the way that the stairway is proposed right now meets code. If they were to do anything grander or to go project into that required 20-foot setback, they would essentially have to do grade changes and grading to push it back. So that's just as an FYI. I'm not sure if that's something that you would still like to.
I meant what's west of where they have it proposed in this area. So the setback is here, and all this is landscape. They could work something in here if they think it's a good idea. I think it will add to it,
Okay.
so it's past it, and then they could, they're already going to build a retaining wall here. Now, whether they have a couple of little ones with landscaping built in it, if you think that's going to add to that design, I think it would be a good idea, and that's why I think it's a consideration.
Okay, it's a consideration.
To work in that area,
Okay.
past the setback.
Board agrees, consideration?
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem with that.
Also, there was the consideration of redesigning the hallway experience. However, that would make changes to the exterior, and I think the board was very adamant in regards to any massing change or, having blank walls or horizontal surfaces on the previous design. So I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels about that comment.
Well, isn't a consideration somewhat of a point for the architect to consider?
It's up to you.
Yeah,
It's
it
up- it's
it
up-
could
it's up
be
to whoever
ignored
makes the motion
altogether.
to.
It's not being prescribed.
Yeah, it's something if there's consensus, we put it in. If there isn't.
If there is a consensus, we don't even add the consideration. So I'm not sure if.
I see where you're going. I don't particularly have a problem with it. Again, kind of thinking, it's inside their church. I would be a little concerned if it did start making a blank wall in the front, but that's kind of my concur.
I agree.
Okay. Well, whoever makes the motion can
Gotcha.
add it and feel free to change it. But okay. And the last comment was again, but this is going back to the square windows along the Ramsdale bump out.
Right.
So,
I think-
am I missing anything?
Yeah, I've got two more.
Thank you. And forgive me,
Insua's
Mr. Insua's,
concept
yes.
of removing the columns from the portico and adding a truss, I think, between the two trellis structures to open that up.
My primary purpose was just to state it, not to make it a consideration or anything.
Oh, not even.
Just, I think it would, I stated it.
Statement. Yeah, we'll have a new category.
Good statement.
Okay, so we will not
Make
put
lots
that.
of those
We won't
here.
put that in our.
We might
list.
want to add that as a consideration because again,
a good idea.
the
Oh, okay.
well, not that it's a good. It really depends if the board feels consensus in regards to this comment, to have it in the record for a record of decision, because if anyone was to come back and have it not in the record and to have major changes to that gable or truss system, our staff is required to look at what was approved by the DRB and to make sure that the plans that go into plan check are either consistent with the plans that were presented before the DRB or that they address the comments and conditions that the DRB made. And so we would probably want that in
I
some
think
sort
it
of
should be a
record.
condition.
Yeah.
Or consideration?
Or consideration.
Consideration. Okay.
Consideration.
Great.
And then I have another, I believe it was a condition proposed by Board Member Palmer about requiring the interlocking pavers
Oh, the
rather than
pavers,
the
yes.
stamped concrete.
Yes.
Is that agreement on that?
A condition or a consideration?
It sounded like a
I think a
condition.
condition, because I think the stamped concrete, make it look more utilitarian,
Yeah,
maybe colored concrete, which I don't think,
And what area are we referring to?
it's the front courtyard area off
The
of Ramsdale, I think that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I got you. The area down in front, like at the southeast corner at the intersection. You weren't talking about the whole parking lot.
No.
Gotcha. Okay. Got you. I could support that.
Consideration,
Yeah.
As a consideration. Okay.
Well, or
I think
no, I
it's a
think you
condition.
were conditioning it.
Okay, thank you. And then finally, I don't know if this got much traction, but there was some talk about the doors at the basement level, if there was any concern about.
I was looking for clarification.
Okay.
on the basement one.
No concern?
The parking pop-outs, is that one that needs to be on here also, or?
Can't do that.
Can't.
Well, that's
Well-
just, it's a code, it's a,
So we don't need to mention it here? Okay. So I was just going to say, no, we mentioned the 5.5-foot wall, right?
well, that's,
okay.
and that's because we now
Because
need
we
to
can see
modify
those
it.
walls, right? I thought the planning in the parking lot was a great idea myself, but
Design feature. We'll make sure, if at all possible, that they can have it and still comply with the code
Code,
sections,
right.
then we will make sure that those triangular pop-outs,
because it's
So is
taking
that
up the
part of
parking
consideration?
space is what you're saying, right?
but there's certain parking spaces where that pop-out is projecting into the required clear space. So those would have to be eliminated.
They could just have all of their congregation drive small cars
Or walk.
or walk. Anybody entertain a motion with the conditions and
I would
considerations?
move to approve based on the conditions.
3 conditions and 4 considerations.
I'll
Okay,
second
I have
it.
a motion by Board Member Palmer, a second by, I'm sorry, by who?
Mr. Simonian?
By Mr. Simonian. Okay, so in terms of roll call, Board Member Palmer?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Board Member Insua?
Yes.
Chairman Ellis?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
We'll look forward to seeing your church. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Next on our is the approval of minutes from November 8.
Correct, and all of you were
All of
present.
us were here.
I have a question on those minutes. I thought we agreed that there's a portion in there about the windows,
On which is the Stanley or the, that was the one with the place in the back?
place in the back, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
I don't have the
I'm
minutes.
sorry,
I got it right here.
for which case?
Stanley, 1129 Stanley.
Okay, for
I thought we allowed the rear structure to have or vinyl windows because it wouldn't be seen, and the front structure was not allowed to have vinyl. I think the minutes state that neither would be allowed to have vinyl.
No,
For-
I'm looking at it, I don't see anything about locate away from windows.
Stanley, and these would be the 4 conditions listed for Stanley on page 3 of the minutes?
Don't have them in front
Here,
of me.
I mean, that's what's on there. I didn't see, they don't mention that at all. I remember we talked about it, because there were different
Where
windows.
did I read them online, and
There you go, they sent you a different set of minutes than when they
I'm
wanted.
wondering,
It looks like what I read when I was online.
where's Stanley? Is that
It was south of Colorado.
this is the one,
It was behind an
Chevy
apartment.
Chase?
Did you see the ones, and forgive me, since I wasn't at that board, it was Roger Kiesel who was handling that board. Could it possibly be the ones that for Fisher? Because there's a comment on number 2.
That was it.
I'll pull it up.
It was
if you want.
Fisher.
That's it's
So
Fisher. It's Fisher.
where it
I'm
does
lying to you,
say,
right.
work with staff to achieve consistency for new windows proposed for the existing front house, including deletion of sliders of the front facade and street-adjacent portions of the side facades. The new windows for the front house that are visible from the street should either be single-hung, double-hung, fixed, or casement. Vinyl windows vinyl windows area acceptable for windows not visible from the street and on the new rear unit. Vinyl windows are acceptable for windows not visible from the street and on the rear
I
unit.
misread it then.
Pardon?
I misread it then.
So is that correct,
That's-
or?
Yeah, we were going to allow vinyl windows.
Correct.
Yes,
Okay,
acceptable
so
If not visible.
if not visible.
Yeah.
if not visible from the street,
I
correct.
misread.
I'm sorry,
Okay.
I thought there were only two when I first looked at it, but there was the third one. I was picturing the right project, I just was on the wrong.
It was on the wrong street.
Stanley versus Fisher? Yeah.
Stanley versus Fisher. Sounds like a court case.
It does sound like a court case,
lawsuit.
doesn't it?
Would somebody care to entertain a motion for the minutes?
I move to approve the minutes.
Second.
I have a motion by Board Member Palmer, second by Board Member Insua. Board Member Palmer?
Yes.
Board Member Insua?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Chairman Ellis?
Yes.
Motion passes to approve the minutes as submitted, 4-0. I have no staff announcements. Mr. Platt, any announcements from you?
I don't.
Okay, well, the
We're-
planning department would like to wish everyone happy holidays. So
Thank you.
we will see everyone back here in the year 2013. So
And
happy
it's,
New Year.
The third Thursday again of January at this point.
It
That's
is.
the 10th.
You are scheduled the second.
Oh, the second.
DRB 1 is held on the second Thursday of every month.
Second, okay.
Correct.
Somehow.
So you will be receiving a new design review board schedule.
We actually got
We
one.
already got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
Right.
Okay, perfect. So there you have it. So happy New Year, everyone. And
Happy New Year. Care to
is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
All in favor?
That works.
Aye.
Great. Thank you.